Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take sources you send us, dig in, and really pull out the key insights.
And today's source is, well, it's a bit different.
Yeah, definitely different. It's a YouTube video, originally in French, so we've worked through the translation. The title is, let me get this right, 317 FR, Oriane C278 2 P1 degrees, HAARP operateur, exter Julien Lazarevic, method Griffasi.
And the core of it seems to be a recording of something called an investigative hypnosis session.
Exactly. It features a woman named Oriane being asked questions about the HAARP program while under hypnosis.
Now, just to be crystal clear up front, our aim here isn't to validate or debunk anything said in this video.
Absolutely not. We're here to unpack the claims as presented in the video. We want to understand the core ideas, follow the questioning, see what pops out as, interesting or thought-provoking.
All based purely on what's in this specific source material.
Right. So let's jump in. At the very start, Oriane's asked for her initial thoughts on HAARP. What's the first thing that comes up for her?
Almost instantly, she says chemical products. And also frequencies like the radio.
Interesting pairing right off the bat. Chemical products and radio frequencies.
Yeah, and she connects them. She describes visualizing strange antennas and there's smoke coming from them, which she says leads to cloud formation.
Okay, so a very direct atmospheric effect in her view. Antennas, smoke, clouds.
It taps into that whole weather modification narrative that often surrounds HAARP, doesn't it?
It really does. Then she describes these antenna fields as square, again comparing them to radio frequencies. And she links this to chemtrails, that's her term, and chemical substances.
So it's like the antennas and the aerial chemicals are working together in her perception, the frequencies activating the substances, maybe.
That seems to be the idea she's conveying, but then it takes a pretty major turn.
How so?
She adds that HAARP also modifies tectonic plates, suggesting it can cause earthquakes, volcanic activity.
Wow, okay. That's a huge leap from atmospheric effects. How does she say it does that?
Through directed waves creating a torsion, like a twisting force.
A torsion, right. So not just weather, but deep geological manipulation. That's a core claim here, even if the mechanism isn't, scientifically detailed in the video.
Definitely a major claim. It really sets the stage for the scale of things she discusses later. Mainstream science, of course, doesn't support radio waves causing plate tectonics.
Important context to keep in mind.
So after those initial impressions, the questioning moves to the targets of HAARP. According to Oriane in this session, what's it aimed at?
Well, first, the sky, which fits with the cloud stuff. Then she says the Earth, specifically mentioning the lithosphere.
The lithosphere.
Yeah.
That's the Earth's crust and upper mantle, right? The solid outer part.
Exactly. So again, reinforcing that idea of influencing the planet's structure, not just the atmosphere.
And she gets geographically specific, too. She mentions areas with snow, Australia, Africa, India. Those are listed as primary targets.
Any reason given why those places?
Not explicitly in this part of the video, it's just stated. Snow could link to weather, maybe the continents to the tectonic plate idea.
It's quite a spread. And the stated purpose for all this targeting...
According to Oriane, moving tectonic plates. Even moving entire continents.
Moving continents. Okay, we're talking planetary scale engineering here, allegedly. That's quite something.
Yeah, the scope is enormous. Then the questions shift to past events Oriane believes HAARP was involved in. What does she bring up?
First is a Sri Lanka event. She describes waves in the ground causing plates to fracture, leading to earthquakes and the island moving.
The 2004 Sri Lanka earthquake and tsunami is obviously a huge event. Her explanation is specific. Waves, fracturing plates.
And she also mentions negative effects on the sky and water connected to that same event. Again, linking different environmental spheres.
We have to remember this is her perception under hypnosis, not presented as verified fact in the video itself.
Crucial point. But it shows the kind of major disasters being associated with HAARP in this narrative.
She also mentions an event in a poor Arab country. The stated purpose there, causing deaths, reducing the population.
That's obviously a very heavy and serious claim, again, presented as her perception.
Yes. And finally, she mentions small volcanic events, also being linked to HAARP.
So it's not just the cataclysms, but potentially smaller geological stuff too, like a dial they can turn up or down.
That seems to be the implication. A spectrum of influence.
Okay, so the video then looks forward. It mentions HAARP projects potentially expiring in 2025. What's the idea there?
Oriane's perception is that certain experimental programs are concluding them, like they've run their course.
And why would they conclude? Did they achieve something?
According to her, yes. The ability to modify rain and snowfall has supposedly been perfected.
Ah, so they've mastered that in this view and don't need to research it further.
That seems to be the gist. By 2025, controlling precipitation is supposedly a solved problem.
Okay, so if that's 2025, the video that asks about projects predicted for 2030, what does she see coming then?
More advanced stuff. Testing tornadoes, for one.
Creating tornadoes, how?
By using waves to manipulate conflicting air masses, apparently. It fits her wave-based model.
Right. And what else for 2030?
Triggering volcanoes, increasing tectonic plate movement, potentially detaching small continents or coastal areas.
Detaching continents, the scale just keeps increasing.
It really does. And there's one more thing mentioned for 2030. A fine gray rain.
A fine gray rain of unknown composition. That sounds ominous.
Yeah, it's left hanging there at that point. We find out more later, but initially it's just this mysterious gray rain.
Okay, so the focus then shifts within the video. It asks about the impact of HAARP radio waves on the mental body. What does Oriane describe?
She talks about visualizing something like a fluid helmet over her head, and she compares it to a microwave.
The microwave analogy suggesting harmful radiation interference.
Exactly. And the effects she lists are pretty concerning. Reduced cognitive capacity, like your brain slowing down, malaise, vertigo, nausea, memory loss, even mental blanks, just general neurological disruption, it sounds like.
It touches on real concerns people have about electromagnetic frequencies, though these are for specific, quite severe perceptions.
And she also specifically mentions the thyroid and thymus glands being significantly affected.
So potential impacts on the endocrine and immune systems too, not just the brain.
Right. But then the questioning takes a really unexpected turn into what the video calls metaphysical observations.
Metaphysical. Okay, how so?
Oriane starts talking about detecting stolen things. She describes them as black bat-like figures. Later, she calls them pterodactyls with red eyes.
Pterodactyls. Okay, where are they?
Swarming above the HAARP antennas. And she says they contribute to a feeling of overexcitement.
Wow. Okay, so we've shifted from technology, geology, weather, to non-physical entities.
It seems so. It's quite a blend. She also perceives dark waves, lots of codes, agitation, a generally somber, negative atmosphere on this level.
Dark waves, codes, and pterodactyls.
And dragons.
Dragons.
Yeah, she says she sees dragons too, but much higher up.
Higher up than the pterodactyls, implying some kind of hierarchy.
That's the impression. It's definitely moving into very esoteric territory here.
Absolutely. So the video pursues this, asks more about these entities.
It does. It confirms the black flying things are seen as pterodactyls with reptilian DNA. And Oriane mentions seeing antennas on the ground as well, not just the big arrays.
Okay, and what's the function of these pterodactyl entities, according to her?
Their function is to enter Earth. They do this through small portals or vortexes that she says are created by the HAARP waves.
So HAARP is like opening doors for them.
That's the idea. She says they're attracted to the low frequencies, which they understand. So HAARP is inadvertently, or maybe not, facilitating their entry.
And do they influence HAARP itself?
She suggests they enable faster infiltration because of these frequencies. Like it's a mutually beneficial thing, perhaps, from their perspective.
Faster infiltration. But why do they want to infiltrate Earth? What's their goal?
According to Oriane, they're interested in humans, our consciousness, our energy.
Consciousness and energy.
Yeah. She says their goal is to get something they lack: consciousness itself.
That's a pretty profound and kind of chilling motivation. Seeking consciousness from humans.
It is. And the relationship between the dragons and these pterodactyls.
She said the dragons were higher up.
Right. She says they work together. The pterodactyls monitor the frequencies for the dragons, apparently.
A coordinated effort. But then comes maybe the biggest claim in this section.
Which is?
Oriane asserts that the dragons gave the HAARP technology to humans in the first place.
Whoa. Okay, so non-human entities are the source of the tech.
According to this session, yes. And their purpose in giving it was supposedly to create fear and manipulate the Earth and us.
That completely reframes the whole thing, doesn't it, if you follow that line of thought?
It does, and she adds that these entities find it hard to infiltrate Earth normally, so HAARP is seen as an open door for them.
Making it easier to get in and pursue their goal of obtaining consciousness.
Exactly. It's a very elaborate metaphysical backstory presented here.
Okay. After that detour, the video comes back to the impact on the mental body. Anything new here?
Oriane mostly reiterates the feeling of thought disorientation, visual disturbances. She uses that microwave oven analogy again.
Right, the microwave helmet idea.
Yeah. And she mentions positive and negative antennas creating wave connections, with lots of antennas amplifying the effect. sort of reinforcing the technological side after the metaphysical part.
Okay. Then, consequences for the physical body. This gets pretty intense.
What kind of links does she make?
Links to madness, anxiety attacks, fear of going insane, memory loss, losing your sense of identity, even personality splitting, and death.
These are extremely serious conditions being attributed, again in her perception, to HAARP's influence.
And she also suggests it exacerbates things like depression, burnout, general illness, even cancer rates. Like it's a contributing factor to wider health problems.
Lowering resilience, maybe.
Perhaps. The physical feeling she describes is like a jackhammer in the head.
Oof, that's vivid.
And she raises the possibility of sterility, linking it back to the disruption of the thymus gland and other organs.
Adding reproductive health to the list of potential impacts.
And just generally, at the cellular level, she perceives weakness, a slowing down.
Like a fundamental drain on biological vitality.
Yeah. Then the video asks about influence on smaller things. Viruses, bacteria, genetic mutations.
And what does she perceive there?
She thinks HAARP can speed up the replication of viruses and bacteria
Oh.
by agitating their nuclei.
So potentially making infections spread faster or become more potent.
That's the implication. And for genetic mutations.
A slight influence, she says. Not a primary driver, but maybe a contributing factor.
Okay, back to the future. The 2030 predictions. This time, they ask for specific geographical areas likely to be most affected.
And which places does she name?
Italy, France, Egypt, specifically the Mediterranean basin, also India, Japan, Australia, and even Antarctica.
Antarctica, too. Interesting. And what's predicted for the Mediterranean basin specifically?
A reduction of landmass. Tectonic plates separating, aiming to cut continents, reduce population, cause fatalities.
Yes.
It's presented as a deliberate, catastrophic plan.
Cutting continents, reducing population. That's incredibly grim.
It is. Now remember that fine gray rain mentioned earlier for 2030.
Yeah, the mysterious stuff. Do we get an explanation now?
We do. Oriane identifies it as chemical products spread by airplanes. She explicitly says chemtrails.
Ah, so it connects to that narrative. What are its properties?
She says it's non-radioactive but harmful. Damages plants, acts like a persistent pesticide on people.
And the purpose.
Population reduction and control. She alleges elites in the military support this.
Right. This definitely aligns with well-established chemtrail conspiracy theories about population control. Again, presented as her belief.
Exactly. The video then asks about past impacts on various environmental things. Floods.
Linked to intentional tectonic plate movement and volcanic activity caused by HAARP manipulating temperature differences, which destabilizes humans and animals.
Communication systems.
Deliberately disrupted or jammed by HAARP when needed.
So it's portrayed as having a hand in almost everything geological, meteorological, technological.
Pretty much. And regarding recent catastrophes,
She perceives HAARP as often amplifying things, making existing vulnerabilities worse, or triggering events. Though sometimes, she says, events are just experiments.
like testing the system and the effects on plants and animals.
Vegetation weakened, left nutritious fruit, animals slowed down, affected by microwave-like waves and these subtle radio frequencies causing unease.
A general weakening and disturbance of the natural world.
Yeah. Then the question of timing. How long between turning HAARP on and seeing an effect?
Her perception is a delay of about 15 minutes up to maybe 2 hours. It depends on the target and the intensity.
So quite quick, plausibly direct cause and effect in her view.
Seems so.
What about the locations? Where does she believe these HAARP installations actually are?
Alaska is mentioned as the main one, which is well known, but also others in the U.S. hidden in a forest. Australia, also hidden. China. Africa. And underground in Europe, specifically mentioning Brussels.
A global network, including hidden and underground sites. What about ships? HAARP on ships.
Yes, she confirms seeing them, describes them as wave relays,
Relays, what can they do?
cause underwater cataclysms, she says. Their effect on weather is indirect. They influence water currents, which then affect air currents.
And there was that specific case mentioned, a boat off Valencia, Spain during heavy rains.
Yes, she identifies that boat as a relay station, receiving waves from Africa, contributing to experimental weather manipulation causing those rains.
Linking a specific weather event to a specific vessel acting as a HAARP relay.
Uh-huh. The connection to chemtrails or contrails comes up again, too.
How does she see them interacting with HAARP now?
She believes the chemicals in the trails are activated by HAARP waves. They become reactive.
Activated. Leading to what?
Significant climate problems, she says. Rapid weather changes within a single day. And also negative effects on people's well-being.
Like what?
Heart problems, lung issues, and inducing feelings, sadness, depression, unease, fear.
So the combination is worse than either component alone in this view.
That's the idea. Then, a question about the aurora borealis, the northern lights.
What's her take on that? Not the standard scientific one, I assume.
No. She believes they aren't natural solar phenomena, but are caused by chemical reactions and waves creating light effects. Essentially, an artificial atmospheric display linked to these activities.
Okay. And what about the official story that the U.S. Air Force ended its HAARP project?
She dismisses that completely, calls it manipulation to hide ongoing work that's becoming more obvious.
Does she offer any evidence for it continuing?
She mentions seeing military rockets launched containing frequency waves and chemical combinations, linking aviation, military chemicals, and frequencies together.
And the metaphysical angle comes back here, too.
Yes. She perceives the military collaborating with those non-physical entities, the dragons and pterodactyls, to control Earth's climate and, well, everything else.
A collaboration between military tech and metaphysical entities for global control. That's quite the picture.
It is. Finally, the video asks, can anything be done to counter HAARP?
What suggestions does Oriane offer?
It's mostly focused on the individual, raising your own frequency.
Which usually means things like positive thinking, meditation, right?
Yeah.
In these contexts.
Yes, that kind of thing. Also, acknowledging HAARP exists, but without giving into fear, maintaining personal stability, eating well, strengthening your body to be less affected.
So personal resilience and spiritual or energetic practices as a defense.
Pretty much. And one last connection is made to inner earth activities.
Inner earth. Is there a link perceived there?
Yes, she confirms a connection, mentions a CEO figure, probably symbolic for a controlling group. She says inner earth entities are involved in manipulating plates, water levels, weather, tsunamis.
Also aiming for population reduction and control.
Yes. Their motivation, fear of losing control as things are slipping away from them, and they're aiming for some kind of future simulation.
Wow. That covers the claims from the first video. It's a lot. Extensively detailed and quite extreme.
Extremely. Which brings us to the second source you mentioned, an Italian video discussing investigative hypnosis itself.
Right. This feels really important for context. What are the key takeaways from that second source?
The main point it stresses is that information from a single hypnosis session is seen as highly contaminated.
Contaminated. By what?
Many things. The dimensions the info travels through, different consciousnesses, the person's own interpretations, their beliefs, their personal stuff. It all gets mixed in.
The speaker in that video used an analogy, didn't they?
Yes, like people trying to communicate underwater, speaking different languages. Information gets distorted very easily.
So, according to this view, a single session isn't really about getting objective facts.
Not primarily. It's more seen as a way to understand the client's issues and work on them esoterically or spiritually. It's therapeutic, not necessarily factual investigation.
So how do they try to get potentially reliable information through investigative hypnosis, according to this source?
It requires many sessions with many different people. You look for consistent patterns that emerge independently across lots of individuals.
Ah, safety in numbers, kind of. Looking for the recurring themes.
Exactly. They give the example of common descriptions of greys or reptilian beings emerging from thousands of sessions. That consistency across unrelated people gives it some potential weight in their view.
But even then, what percentage of info is considered potentially reliable?
The video states it's very low, maybe only 2 or 3%.
2 or 3%. That really puts the claims from one session, like Oriane's, into perspective, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It highlights the huge potential for subjective experience, symbolism, and, well, contamination, as they put it.
Does the second video mention other challenges?
Yes, things like the difficulty of investigating specific people without their permission, subconsciously or otherwise, and the risk of interference from other entities during the process. It's ethically and methodologically complex.
So the bottom line from the second source is really about critical evaluation.
Definitely. Treat information from hypnosis with extreme caution. It's not a straightforward path to objective truth.
And it mentioned that ongoing hypnosis investigations tend to focus narrowly.
Right, like on restricted topics, say specific historical events or social issues, rather than vast general things like, black holes or the entire workings of HAARP. The narrower focus supposedly increases the chance of finding reliable patterns.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, we've journeyed through some really extraordinary, far-reaching claims about HAARP, from that first video.
Claims covering everything from weather and geology to mental control and metaphysical entities.
But that second source on investigative hypnosis gives us a really crucial lens, doesn't it? Urging caution and critical thinking about how such information is obtained and interpreted.
Yeah, the contrast is stark. You have the first video presenting these detailed, seemingly factual assertions from one session.
And the second video saying, hold on, information from single sessions is highly unreliable, you need massive consistency checks, and even then, only a tiny fraction might be dependable.
It really shows the different ways people try to make sense of complex, often poorly understood phenomena like HAARP.
I think this exploration gives us a fascinating look at the kinds of narratives that build up around these topics, blending science, speculation, fear, and sometimes, like we saw here, the truly esoteric.
So maybe the final thought for our listeners is this. We all have this drive to understand things that seem powerful or mysterious. We use different tools, science, intuition, investigation, even hypnosis. Looking at these two contrasting sources, what stands out most to you? What questions does this deep dive leave you pondering?